Hey, welcome everybody. Come on in, grab a seat. Thanks for bearing with us. We're letting people kind of show up in waves, and for everybody that's coming from out of town, thanks for being here. Hey, child. What are you talking about? Who are you smiling at? I know it. That's my son, Huck. He's here for Peter Rollins like everybody else. All right, so tonight's going to be real quick, just to kind of give you a little teaser at the beginning. This whole thing is probably going to be like 20 minutes of just some introductory comments, and then rather than reinventing the icebreaker and trying to force something really awkward, we're just going to do the thing that culture's been doing for thousands of years and go to a bar, because that's nature's icebreaker. So, and we're going to go to Persimmon Hollow, which is the gift of some of the folks within this very community. So we'll drink their delicious craft beer and talk with each other, and that way when we come together tomorrow and we have conversations together, we'll all know each other. It'll be great. We'll be a big family. So welcome officially tonight. We'll probably do a quick welcome tomorrow because I think there'll be a lot more folks here. So this is Collective Threshold Weekend. This is our first ever attempt at conference, think tank, theology workshop, community laboratory, thank you, radical retreat, a bunch of these things. An opportunity really, hopefully, to share our lives with each other over some lectures that will probably break our minds, thanks to Pete. Conversations that in some ways may break our hearts. Fun stuff. But really, hopefully, some self-discovery and transformative practice that breaks us open and really creates the possibility of life, both at its most honest and also at its most full. And we believe that these kind of coincide. So if some of that sounds good, great. If none of that sounds intriguing at all, there's plenty more that we won't even get to mention tonight that you will definitely connect with, so hang in there. I want to say a little bit about the language of threshold. Some people have kind of been like, what is that about? So this has been one of the terms that's helped kind of to understand, for us to understand what collective is. We started using this language to sort of clarify our own sense of identity as a congregation and also our common purpose. And so in looking at ourselves as a group of people, it became clear that collective started to represent sort of a safe middle space, or what Pete calls a suspended space, for people with a foot out the door of religion, as well as those who are hesitant to step into anything in the vein of faith, spirituality, religious practice, sacred journey, whatever language you use. And so in addition to naming what we already sort of were together, it also helps clarify a sense of purpose and task for this congregation, which is to do hospitality on the threshold. And so for anyone who has been hosted well by someone, like in their home, or for any of you who are actually great hosts yourselves, you probably know the inaugurating and concluding acts of hospitality, which are the welcome and the farewell. They help to shape and also to punctuate everything that happens over the course of like a dinner party together, a meal, an engagement, whatever. So for a threshold community, right, if we're saying that's what we're sort of already becoming and hoping to become, this is a primary task for us to welcome well and for us to send people off well. And so at our best, I love these metaphors, at our best, and oddly enough, in the same space, when we do hospitality well on a threshold, we are actually sort of serving both as hospice chaplains and as midwives for each other. And this is what I mean. We're hospice chaplains to one another when our religious history, our structures, our former beliefs, certainty and security in spiritual promises, when these things are passing away and when those transitions are experienced as a form of loss, as sort of a foot out the door, and rather than frantically trying to prop these things up and maintain some of these belief structures, systems, we're actually willingly sort of shepherding each other through this passing. We're trusting each other enough to navigate our own doubts and criticisms and the sense of loss. The key, though, is that we're offering a space where none of us has to do which is sort of the thing that sets it apart. We can do that together. And then on the flip side, the other metaphor, at our best, we're midwives who sit with each other through the pain and the labor of allowing something new, not a new religion, but a new kind of life and a new way of being to be born. And we can't, and Pete says this over and over, we can't do this for one another. A minister or a priest does this for us on our behalf, telling us what to think, telling us what to believe. But we can be there with one another in those pinnacle moments, in moments of newness, in moments of life. all of that to say, again, we all know why we're here. And Peter's work absolutely connects with this posture and with the work of threshold communities, work itself, precisely by threading this needle between religion in its existing forms and whatever it is that comes in the aftermath of that. I mean, for goodness sake, if you guys haven't seen, you'll have a chance tonight. The subtitle of the new book that he just came out with, Divine Magician, is The Disappearance of Religion and the Rediscovery of Faith. So this is like exactly what we're talking about. Can't get much more clear a connection than that. On top of all this, though, Pete's and his experimental practice of threshold communities like Icon and Icon in New York City, they create an incredibly unique opportunity for all of us, those who are already a part of Collective and those who are sort of coming from out of town to experience with us. It's a unique opportunity for us to learn not only from his theory, and he has all the academic background in the world, but from what he refers to as technology, right? Which is to ask the question, how does all the theory function? As people put this into practice outside of the academy, outside of classrooms, outside of books, what does it look like for us to live well together? And so that's primarily where this weekend is headed. So without any further ado, to sort of kick off a weekend of thinking and drinking and chatting and practicing all the way from Belfast by way of Connecticut and LA, he needs no more introduction. If you need more introduction, the Wikipedia page is surprisingly accurate. Please help me welcome Pete Rollins.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, you know, community is difficult. Life is hard. You know, if were to turn to the other and talk a little bit about what we've struggled through, even in the last 6 months or the last year, you'd hear incredible things. Incredible things. You'd be amazed at how do we even get out of the house? You know, how do we come together to do something like this? You would hear stories of loss and death and new life, struggles in relationships and in jobs, and growing old, ill health, maybe good news that you know, something that you thought was a disease or an illness, you know, you don't have. And then of course the bad second part of that, realizing, well, you're still going to die, you know. You're not going to die of that, but you're going to die of something else. You know, life is beautiful and has wonderful moments, but life is also very, very difficult at times. And we often conspire with popular culture, new technologies, religion, in order to avoid some of those things, in order to escape some of that suffering. And that's completely natural. Of course we're going to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. If you've gone through a difficult time going out, forgetting about it, going to some kind of concert, getting drunk, something like that, just getting completely out of your head for a little while. We all do that. But the problem is, of course, the next day, the stuff comes back. So you have to go out and do it again. And you can often get caught up in a rut. So when every Saturday night you go out, you've got a job you don't like and a relationship that's tough, every Saturday night you're out drinking, trying to forget, going to a bar with loud music that helps just block out the bad stuff. And then, of course, the next day you get the hangover, the return of the repressed, and you do it all over again. But then some of us have the Sunday morning version of that, where we go and we get drunk on music that tells us everything's going to be great, and on sermons and prayers that make us feel fantastic and help us momentarily forget the difficulties of our lives. But then on Monday morning, it comes back, and so we have to go back to our Sunday morning place, and it becomes an addiction. There's people who go to church every week, honestly. Couldn't believe it. Have you ever been? It's terrible. You know, not even just every week, every Wednesday and every Thursday, and it becomes this kind of thing, this crutch, just like a bar can be a crutch. It's like, I think it was during the recession, musicals became huge, because a musical was something that, you know, was massive production value. It was a way to escape the economic hardships you were in, just for a couple of hours to see this fantasy world put on the silver screen. It was wonderful. But of course you went out and you still had the difficult things in your life. And so, you know, what I'm interested in is, well, what does it mean to have a community where we can face those things? Because We're all haunted houses. And we're all full of ghosts, each and every one of us. We all have our ghosts. The people that we've loved and lost, the people we've hurt, and the people who have hurt us. And those people are different for you than they are for me. Your ghosts don't haunt me. I have my own ghosts. There's people who could walk through that door right now and your heart would stop. They might be long since dead. They might be someone who lives in this town or lives thousands of miles away. But if they came into this room, you'd freak out. And you probably don't even think about them on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis. They're not in your mind at all. They're forgotten. They're not gone. If you go into a graveyard, you'll see on some of the stones that interesting phrase, gone but not forgotten. And what that means, as we know, is if something tragic happens, someone dies, we mourn, we remember, we hold their memory deeply. We maybe keep things that remind us of them. We keep parts of those people in us. And in doing that, somehow the weight of the suffering very gradually, over time, dissipates. In the remembering, the sting of that loss dissipates. But there's the opposite. And that's whenever something's so painful, we try to forget it. We put it out of our minds. We push it down. This is the realm of the unconscious. The realm of the unconscious can be described in a simple way: the forgotten but not gone. You forget it, but it's not gone. It's there, like a rock you carry within you. You don't even notice it, but it comes out. It comes out in bursts of anger. It comes out in overworking, in overdrinking. It comes out in stress. It comes out because one day you're driving home and you see a billboard, and it's just a regular billboard, and you end up weeping, and you don't know why. It's nothing, you can't figure out why. Or an advert on TV, and you feel something welling up inside you, and you don't know what's going on. These are symptoms. They're ways in which the truth speaks, because when we do not speak our unpleasant truths find unpleasant ways to speak. And so we push that stuff down, it comes up in symptoms. And those symptoms speak our truth. Our truth isn't really on the daily life, the image that you share with everybody, right? The truth is in not your lips, not in what you say, but the tapping of your finger, the anxiety that I see in your eyes. And in that little burst of anger, there's the truth speaking. And that's why in therapeutic circles, often the therapist doesn't even bother listening to you when you're talking about your daily life and what your mum said to you and what your friend said to you. And they don't listen to that until you make a mistake, until you stutter, until you use a wrong name. And then they say, oh, tell us about that. The very thing that you think, oh, that's not me, that's just something silly. You're like, no, that could be the royal road to truth. The very thing that all of us overlook, oh, I just had a burst of anger, that's not me. You know what, maybe that's more you than you realise. Maybe that's speaking very, very deeply about a truth that you cannot face. And there's a saying that all of us will know. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And in a sense, none of us believe this. And we conspire with religion to avoid confronting the truth. We do anything we can not to look at the things that are going on inside us, to avoid them at all costs. We push it down. But what if it's right? That if we can look at the truth, bring that stuff to the surface, wrestle with our ghosts, we can find freedom. When we push these things back, because by the way, the ghosts aren't there like it says in the movies. You know, in the movies the ghosts are there because we built this community on some sort of Native American burial ground, you know, and we have to figure out why the ghosts can't let us go because of what we did. No, that's all obscurantism, right? The ghosts are there not because they can't let go of us. They're there because we can't let go of them. If you've seen the film Ghost Town, it's all about this. Ricky Gervais. It's about discovering that the ghosts we have are there. Let them go. We're holding on to them. They're forgotten, but they're not gone. And so over this weekend, I kind of want to look at how we look at these ghosts that become poltergeists. Poltergeists are those ghosts that smash everything, break things. And by the way, it's very concretely, they manifest in defenses. So for example, because all of us want heaven, this is the problem, all of us want heaven, right? And I'm talking about the religious world. I live in LA, the most religious place in the world, right? Everybody is promising wholeness. Everyone is promising satisfaction. Everyone talks like a spiritual guru. You know, new technologies and new age practices and the ayahuasca, the new drug that, you know, will give you a sense of oneness with the universe. These are all kind of religious promises. You don't go to church these days to hear people say, you can live forever. You can escape your decaying body. You'll be able to travel faster than angels. You'll be able to know all things and be simultaneously in multiple places. You know, you go to stuff, man. Right? You'll be able to download yourself in the digital form. You'll be able to be in the cloud. You'll be able to escape this decaying body. We'll be able to abolish death. If not entirely, then we may be able to put it off for thousands, tens of thousands, millions of years. These are religious promises, and by the way, it might be true. But that's not what death is. That's one form of death. Biological death. You know, if I had a gift where I could touch you in the forehead and you'd live forever, right? If you couldn't enjoy the depth of your life, I wouldn't be a god, I'd be a devil. It'd be a curse. Heaven would be full of millions of people screaming for death, right? Even if you could abolish biological death, you would still have death in life. The losses, the pains, the sufferings, the brokenness. Biological death isn't the problem, that's a problem, it's, you know, but that does not abolish death. And there's something for me about how do we learn to live before we die? How do we embrace and discover a depth and density to life? Not simply for self-help reasons, so we can get along and have a better life. Because by the way, this is the worst type of self-help. My good news is this. Life is a bit crap and we don't have the answers, right? That's not going to sell many self-help books, right? Which are often the opposite. It's like, life is great and you can have the answers. Just follow these 10 things, say this prayer, do whatever, and it'll work out. I think that's terrible news. I think that's awful. Because I think that what happens is it never quite works out. The more you want heavenly things, the more you want a relationship that will make you whole and complete, the more incomplete you'll feel. And if you push that down, to say it'll come out in various ways. So the couple on Facebook who are always posting about how happy they are and all these photographs of how great a time they're having, right? If they do one or two of those, you're going like, oh wow, they must be really happy. If they're doing hundreds of them, you're going like, oh man, they must be very depressed, right? They must be in a really tough spot. Because, you know, what happens is, that's called the Nile. You see it in addiction. One of the primary defense mechanisms in addiction is, I'm not an addict, right? I'm not an alcoholic, okay? And that's very difficult, because if you're not an alcoholic, you also say you're not an alcoholic, and someone says, that's exactly what an alcoholic would say, right? I'm definitely not an alcoholic. Well, that's definitely what an alcoholic would say. Right? But denial doesn't work like that. Denial isn't saying, I'm not an alcoholic. Denial is whenever someone says they're not an alcoholic when you didn't even ask. Right? That's denial. You're like, you know what, there's not enough drink at this party, I'm going to go down and get some more. You know, I'm not an alcoholic or anything. I never thought you were. Why are you saying it? You know, I never asked if you're an alcoholic, right? Whenever somebody keeps telling you they're not something and you've never even thought about asking them whether they're that thing, often it's a hint that that's the very thing they're struggling with. So if someone is constantly saying how happy they are, often it's a way, and they don't even realize it themselves. It's a way of them disguising a deep unhappiness, a deep suffering that will come out in different ways. Or displacement, where if someone's unhappy in their marriage but they can't face it, maybe they're in a relationship where they're afraid that if they shout at their partner and show their anger, the person will walk out. Right? Because all relationships are abusive. I've never been on Tinder myself, right? But I've heard, a friend tells me, that the people often say, you know, I won't take any BS, you know, I don't want I don't want an abusive kind of thing, you know, I want something that's like, you know, smooth and whatever. That doesn't exist. right? And if it does, the relationship that's not abusive is a terrible relationship. It's more abusive. The relationship where you go, I can't act out and be angry, because then they'll just walk away. That's terrifying. You have to internalize your anger. Displacement is, if your partner is, I've got a couple of friends, and one of them, their grandmother was dying, and they were losing their job, and they were frustrated, and they were angry, and she was angry with their grandmother because she was looking after her all the time, so it's a great deal of work, but she couldn't be angry with her. It's not her fault that she's dying, she can't be, but she's angry, she's tired, she's frustrated, and so she's taking it out on her partner. Every now and again, she's angry and frustrated at him. That's abusive, right? But he knows, you're not really angry with me, you're dealing with all of this terrible stuff. I can absorb some of that because I'm your partner, and vice versa. Now, it comes a point when something is not mutually in that small way abusive, when it becomes violently abusive, and then you have to leave, you have to get out. But even the best families are abusive. Your sister or your brother will shout at you, your mother will take something out on you, you'll take something out on the kids. There's minimal stuff like that that's part of life, but displacement is where you're in a relationship and you're trying to make it perfect, so you don't show any of your anger or frustration there, but it will come out elsewhere with your friend. You'll shout and scream at them, right? Or splitting, another defense. There's a story I know of a woman whose brother was killed by a drug dealer, and her and the family gathered together to make sure the person who killed their brother was brought to trial. Now, in that process, they painted a picture of their brother, her brother and the mother's son, as like this angel, this really good, perfect person, but he wasn't. He was involved in the whole drug industry himself, right? He was no angel. But anybody who challenged that, so one of her friends said, listen, I went out with your brother, he wasn't, he was a tough guy. She completely distanced herself from those people and that friend, because she couldn't cope with that kind of reality. She needed to simplify the world into good and bad in order to psychologically cope with the trauma. Completely natural, completely normal. But over time, once the court case had gone through, she was able to reconcile with her friend. It took a little bit of time, but she was able to have that space, and her friend was able to say, that's okay, of course I understand, right? So these are the kind of defenses that we have. But, this desire for heaven, this desire for a place without conflict, creates more conflict. Actually, it's good news to be able to go, life is tough, we don't know the answers, to start embracing our anxiety, to embrace our ghosts, to tarry with them, to bring them up to the surface. My friend Kester's just written a book called Getting High, and it's a book that actually charts the history of aviation, of our desire to get up into the heavens. And I think it was Kepler who thought that Eden was on the moon. He literally thought Eden was on the moon because it was the only place high enough to survive the flood, and he wanted to get up there. And this desire to get off the ground, to be in the heavens. But it's also the history of drugs and spirituality, of trying to get high, trying to get away from our finite bodies and our human difficulties. But in the book, he reflects on how this can often lead to disastrous results. And he looks at the film Gravity. I don't know if you've seen Gravity, but Gravity starts with some astronauts in space. They're in the heavens, and there's a woman who's out there in the silence. It's that Apple Morgue aesthetic, all this silence and black and white. And she's up there because her child died. She couldn't cope. And so she escaped into the heavens to try and get away from the suffering. But the symptom always returns, and the symptom in the film returns as an asteroid that smashes into this desire to avoid everything, to be in the silence. It breaks things open. And the whole story is the journey of the return to Earth, to the grit and the grime of the world, where she has to tarry with her suffering, learn to mourn, learn to die, and so learn to live again. This is the topic that we'll be exploring tomorrow. It's how do we take our poltergeists and make them holy ghosts.
Hey there. One of the gifts of being like rooted in this community and having spent the last 3 days with Peter is like I've heard some of the stuff he's working on and I kind of know where he's going, and so like at different points while he's talking I'm like, he's gonna tell that story. I bet that's where he's going. He should do that, and then he doesn't do it. I'm like, what are you doing? He's got it figured out. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. But I also, it's neat because I know the people in the room, and so I'm going, ooh, I wonder, how are they going to react to that? How does that feel? So hang in there. It's going to be a really good weekend. We're going to make it through together. Quick rundown of the schedule. If you guys have not seen kind of the more detailed schedule on the website, just so we all are familiar with how the whole thing is going to go. Tomorrow morning, starting at 9:30, we're going to have some delicious Trilogy coffee. We'll have both hot and iced coffee here in the morning, Mr. Bill's bagels and donuts. So kind of a light breakfast here at 9:30. Right at 10, we'll be starting the first session, and then we'll do a lunch break. Second session at 1, bit of a coffee break, and the third session at 3:30. And then tomorrow evening, we'll be here just socializing. We're going to have done a lot of sort of thinking and processing and wrestling during the day. So at night, we're just going to have a bit of live music. We'll have some drinks, and just we'll be here and kind of be together and just see what happens unscripted. So that'll be good, kind of a way to decompress together. If you have not yet, the suggested donation fee registration, you can do that at either of the computers back there. I would suggest going ahead and doing it. I think we're at maybe like 60% capacity tonight, but based on the stuff that's been coming in online, I think it's going to be pretty full tomorrow. So if you would kindly do that, that will help us to cover the cost of the weekend. As you can imagine, Pete doesn't work for free, and we don't have an entire Peter Rollins budget, though it's something we're working on. So pray for us. So registration, that's good to go. Oh, live stream. If you have people who would like to be a part of this weekend, but they can't physically be here, everything tomorrow, all the sessions are going to be streaming live through our YouTube channel, and there also will be an ability to chat live, and we've got some people who are actually hosts within this community who will be chatting live with the people who are tuning in online. So like if they've got questions, we can shout them out in the room, we can do some reaction in real time, which will be great. Also, if you're tuning in online and you want to help the cause, you can donate online. That would be great. And there's a special line item, by the way, on that thing that says Threshold Weekend with Peter Rollins. So just put in the quantity of like registrations you want rather than trying to figure it out on your own. It'll remove the math. It'll be great. To clarify, there is no childcare tomorrow since we're going to be doing like the all-day thing. And unfortunately, we can't just have kids like hanging out unsupervised and back. So if you left your kids in the car, you're going to want to find a place for them for tomorrow, please. Or you can bring them and they can just hang out in here like Huck. I'm kidding. He's not going to sit here all day tomorrow. He'll be with my in-laws. So the Sunday night event, though, so we'll be all day tomorrow, then Sunday, most of the day, we'll have some breathing room. Sunday night for the regular 5 p.m. collective service, again, Peter will sort of have the floor, and he'll have the majority of that night to kind of wrap up the weekend for us. That is open to the public. Don't worry about the registration or anything for that, and there will be childcare for that. So if you know people that might not be able to come for the whole day tomorrow, but they'd like to come and kind of meet Pete and check out what's going on, that would be a good way to do it on Sunday night at 5. Peter brought a bunch of books that are for sale. They're all $15, flat fee. We'll be able to do credit card. You can do cash. So if you want to get a book, stay up all night and read it, and that way you can call him out on his own work tomorrow. That might be really fun. There is a crew who's actually going to be crashing here overnight. So just see me afterwards, and we'll sort of work out some of the sleeping arrangements. And then the plan for tonight, like I said, we're just going to kind of break in a minute, and then we're going to head over to Persimmon Hollow. If you want to come, awesome. Get to meet some of the other people that are going to be involved. Pete's going to be down there for a while, just kind of getting to know everyone so we have a little bit more familiarity when we come together tomorrow morning. If you have any questions beyond that, this is Jess. She is the amazing assistant that makes things run at Collective. Yeah, we should give a hand to Jess. There would not be a Threshold Weekend without her. So if you have other questions, she's over there. There's going to be stuff tomorrow that you may not be super clear on. Find her, find me, ask somebody. We'll make it through together. So we're going to end tonight, actually I'm going to read our community statement for Collective, and I think we're going to use this to begin the day tomorrow as well. Just as a reminder of sort of the diversity that's present in this room, and really the call within our community statement to maintain the safety of this space, which is really, really important as we kind of wrestle with some of the stuff that we're going to be doing. So, there was a point in time when I had this thing memorized, but I think if I try and do it now, I'll mess it up. Come on, internet. It's so slow. All right, so we value highly the metaphor of journey. We're different people from different places and backgrounds representing a multi-generational community, and we have traveled different paths. So we agree not to make assumptions about the person across from us, next to us, or in conversation with us. We challenge ourselves to be sensitive, knowing this community includes a diverse group of people from lifelong followers of Jesus to those who are just now open to the idea that God might exist. We strive to avoid offense, ask good questions, articulate and explain our responses. We don't assume fluency in the Bible, spirituality, or church language because we believe the message of Jesus is not for Christianity, but for humanity. So we do everything in the spirit of love and grace. If you can get on board with that, we're looking forward to a great day tomorrow. Go in peace. We'll see you down at the bar. Persimmon Hollow is literally this street right here. It looks like a parking lot, but it's actually a street. It's called Georgia Ave. So if you go down there, cross Woodland, and go a little further, Persimmon Hollow is right down there, or you can Google it. Any questions? Any thoughts for the benefit of the group?
Awesome.
Dismissed. Buy some books, get registered, find us if you have questions.